All right, Victor, welcome to the show. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the video a million times. First of all, I got to ask, like, how does someone get certified as the world record fastest two-hand gun grab? Do you call Guinness and say, I think I got something here. Would you come film this, or do you submit it? How does that work?
It first started with people calling me that. They're like, this has got to be. And then with some world record organization took the film, timed it, and they put it up. And it was like, well, if anybody can beat you, go ahead. But it still holds the record at 0.8 of a second. So, yeah, kind of crazy.
I was going to say, I couldn't even tell it where it stopped and started. So 0.8 of a second is probably in the ballpark of what I would have guessed, because I didn't even realize that your hands had left. Never mind that the mag is in your hand at one point. And I'm like, holy smokes. I thought it was a magic trick more than anything else.
Well, yeah. And I've had people say that too. They're like, that must be a trick weapon. And I just go, thank you. That's quite the compliment. Yeah, no, we've been doing this for years. And I mean, SEAL Team 6 guys to CIA to NFL players to the whole gambit for, 35 years now.
What made you want to do it? Like, what was the impetus for, like, hey, I bet you I can do this really quick? Or did you just randomly do it once? I mean, I took a little Krav Maga. I can't say that you'd ever know it, but at one point that was one of the training things, how to disarm, things like that. What was that? Was it something that you would train to do, or just a trick that you thought would be fun to learn?
I'll tell you, one of the ways I get to know people's character and their heart is by the questions they ask. And you just asked $1 million question. Sean, you'd be surprised at how many people this has been viewed over 1 billion times. And very seldom do people ask me. You know who last asked me this in an interview? Was Sean Ryan. And I did his show. And brother, listen to me. One clip with that question had 22 million views.
Let's go! Let's go!
Exactly.
We're posting this. All right. Was it the question or the answer, or is it just a Sean thing? I don't know, and I'm not sure I care. Let's get the views going.
It's actually both. So here's the deal. The reason why I became the world's fastest gun disarm man, at 7 years old, my stepfather, who was a very abusive man with many problems, he put a pistol on the side of my head and he would tap me. And it was a revolver, the hammer was back, his finger was on the trigger. And he actually abused me as a child, tortured me, and ultimately I was left for dead in a commercial cooler. But he's the one who held a pistol to my head and said, if you ever tell anybody what I've done, I will blow your brains out and then tell the police you shot yourself with my pistol playing. So as a child, I fantasized in my mind just growing up, one day, no one will be able to put a gun to my head. I'll be so fast, I'll take it away. And it became a reality for me.
Now, is that a technique that you taught yourself, or did somebody teach it to you and you perfected it?
Oh my gosh. Again, another great question. If you ever ask, Sean, I learned this technique from Chuck Norris, the legend.
No way.
I did. And all I did was I just started tweaking and refining it to become faster and faster and faster. But I always give him the credit for me learning this technique from him.
So does he know? Have you met him?
I have not met him. I've been by his ranch a few times. I sat with a friend this weekend who goes, you still not met Chuck and Gina? Oh my gosh, Victor, I've got to introduce you. And I said, I'd love to meet him. It always be an honor.
Okay. I don't know if you used to ever watch How I Met Your Mother, but there used to be like, they say, challenge accepted. I will. Chuck Norris, they don't sponsor it right now, but they had a product, My Morning Kick, which I love. So there's a free plug for it. Chuck was an early sponsor of the show. I will figure out some way of connecting this, because now I want to play it back. I've enjoyed the book, and we're going to talk about it. All right.
That's
we've
awesome.
covered. All right. That's my mission. I want to get into this book. And I kept thinking, now you've built up the questions, my goodness. And I thought to myself, we're on the cusp of the 4th of July.
Yeah.
We celebrate, in theory, the independence of this country. But really, what we celebrate, if we want to get to it, are individuals who are willing to fight for something, who are willing to be brave, who are willing to stand up for the right thing. And I kind of was thinking about your book and what the lessons that I was picking up from it were.
Mm.
With that as the context, what do you think, where are we as a country? And not just, like I say, the country like a writ large, but the people who make up this country. Where do you
Yeah.
think we are today?
We're not in a good place.
Yeah.
And I would say we're down to a remnant of people who care, who people who have skin in the game, have sacrificed a lot to keep our country where it is. But the majority of people don't understand that there's a hell of a price to pay for the things they enjoy most. And unless we wake up now, not in the future, it's got to be right now, we're not going to be able to enjoy those freedoms. And I say this with context of, and I need your listeners and viewers to understand, I'm what's called a thick data person. It's not just something I read, it's something I've lived, both from a hardship as a child growing up, to joining the Marines, to understanding raising a family, the challenges, to now trying to help men become the very best version of them as God needs them to help straighten our country out. But when I talk about context, I was in Israel days after Hamas attacked. I brought a team there. We got called up, and I saw the tragedy. I saw the horrific. It was so bad. I won't wear those boots again. I walked in so much children's blood in people's homes. And I asked this question of the guys that I train, IDF, special operations guys, who it was their neighborhoods that got attacked. I said, why? Because all of America and all the world would have never thought Israel would have been hit this devastatingly. And this was consistent out of all the folks I spoke to. They said we were underprepared, and we underestimated our enemy. So right now in America, we are underprepared, and we are definitely underestimating those who hate us. And that's a big problem.
And I always ask the politicians who are on the show what they're willing to do. And it's funny, like I said, when I was reading your book, and this is when I can tell it's a good book, is when you start thinking, when you're reading someone's book and your mind is going, and your book kept setting me off in different places. And I kept thinking, I was doing this speech in Maine a couple weeks ago, and I do a Q&A at the end of it. And someone said, what do we need to do? And I said, we need to go out there and be willing to put ourselves on the line. A lot's at stake. The country's at stake. And I said, I know that sounds easy, but it's not, because in this day and age, if you're willing to fight for the values that I think are important to this country, you will be canceled. You will be called names. People will come after you. There's a woman that I read about a while ago where people were calling her civilian employer. So I said, it's easier said than done, but I want to be clear that this is what it's going to take. The Democrats, the left, want us to be silent so that they can overrun us with a lot of the cultural agenda that they have at stake. And I kept thinking to myself, you do some pretty hardcore stuff in the book that you talk about, going to Burma, going to places and helping people in need. But in our own country, people aren't willing to stand up. And I mean, like, from the simple, like, stop giving your kids an app to be on TikTok that's controlled by the Chinese. Stop piling debt onto future generations. We're unwilling to do the simple, Victor.
Yeah. I can't agree with you more. And that's the problem my book addresses. And I specifically lay it at the feet of men. I think men need to step up and lead in their home, in their hometowns, in their churches. Because when men lead, and I'm talking about leading sacrificially, the family will flourish, the culture will then follow suit. We're better off. And the good news is, and what I propose in my book is, it isn't complex. It's simple, and I believe you mentioned it. This, the morality. There's a moral code that God Almighty gives us to follow, and when men steer away from that, then everything else follows. Politicians aren't going to save the country. I don't even think church leaders are. Again, if you just think about crimes, suicide, violence, it's the men. And look, I apologize to young men when I speak to them. I go, look, we drop the ball a lot on moral things. When the biggest, listen, when ISIS was trying to find me and my family in Iraq, because we're over there rescuing women and children from them, or when I've had attempted assassinations on me, and I come back here, I say this: the biggest problem we have in America is not terrorism, it's the lack of men to be fathers and dads. And when we get that right, everything else will change, I guarantee you.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.